when we move to structure, we think about form as a container for writing. So when you've got a young child, for instance, let's say you've got someone 5 to 8 years old, they're not ready to write essays, and God forbid you let that happen, okay? Ignore everything you hear about school. This move to teaching the essay to 8-year-olds, insane. Just gonna call it. They think because 9th graders and freshmen in college aren't writing good essays, the way to teach it is to start it at 8 years old. They're wrong. What's missing is what we're talking about today, having something to say, feeling connected to your own writing voice, and then finding the right container. So here's how we do it at 5 to 8. We let the physical product itself house the writing. So I want to give you an example for my own kids. Here's the Jot It Down fairy tale project that I did with my kids. This one belongs to Katrin. Do you see these rings? Pretend these are transitions in paragraphs. Pretend the pages are points or categories. We allow the binding of their writing to be the container, the format. The format is a bunch of narrations about fairy tales bound in a book by rings. That's the format. She's not ready for transitions. She's not ready to write an essay or a thesis-based piece on fairy tales. She's ready to draw or create pictures, narrate her own version of the story that I jot down for her, and then we bind it together to create a book. This is her book. We read this every day. She loved hearing me read her story, her version of these stories. This is The Tortoise and the Hare. Look how well she knew this story. Do you hear what I'm saying? Another example, lap books. Instead of paragraphs with a lot of transitions, now this is Jacob, he was a little older, but we've got bits and pieces of writing held together in a file folder. Do you see? This creates the housing. It contains the writing. It prevents your child from having to think of perfect openings, transitions between paragraphs, because that is not yet the goal when they are young children. The goal is to generate a lot of writing. But if we want it to be a finished project, let's put it in a container that holds it together so they can have the satisfaction of something complete. Here's Katrin's for Pecos Bill, which is missing the P. I just want you to see. Hers includes things like these little people that represent how many kids he had. She's got question and answer flaps so that we can have the fun of playing with all the ideas that she has built for Pecos Bill. I want you to get a sense that when we're talking about format, it's a container. So at the youngest ages, your kids are not being asked to write transitions. That's too high a skill for them. But they can have the sense of a writing project, a completed experience. Doesn't have to have a beginning, middle, and an end. You can make the beginning, middle, and the end on a timeline. You can take each of their little beginning, middle, and end and just jam them together by clips so that they have the sense of completion. As your child moves ahead, yes, you will start to create some forms for them to try. But where do we start? We don't start with the research paper at age 10. We start with the letter format, which is so well understood. There's a dear, and then there's the hello, and then there's some information, and then there's a signature. That is an easy format. That's the beginning of understanding that the container for writing is not just the external book that you create, or the poster with a caption, or the timeline on a wall, or the photo album with captions. But now the structure that glues it together are these little tags. The date, the dear so-and-so, paragraphs that talk about something, the signature with the closing. And that's a very easy format to follow because it starts to give your kids the idea that the form itself acts as a container for the writing. Lists, alphabetizing the list. Oh, that's one way. That's a structure. Grouping it by item, grouping it by size. These are all containers. Does this make sense? Now, somebody says that in fourth grade, they were looking for opening leads, transitions, etc., because of testing. This is why you homeschool. So you don't have to do that. Here's what's crazy. If you use this free writing process and you allow your kids to have the experience of completing their work and putting it in these containers, when you get to the point where you're teaching leads and transitions in like junior high, they get it because they will feel rich with language and ideas. They're going to want to hook the audience. They're going to want to organize so things hang together because they've already been doing it physically. They just hadn't done it yet imaginatively, academically, linguistically. Does this make sense?